So next up would be correspondence or public comments. I have no correspondence, but I don't believe we have any public either.
Nope.
Okay. So next after that would be agenda review. I have no amendments. I don't know about you, Julie.
The only thing was, and I see Pierrette already did it, was she had more minutes ready to approve. So that was it. I don't think we have anything that isn't there.
Very good. So moving right along, we have a consent agenda for approval of minutes of June 20, July 7th, July 14th, July 21st, and July 29th. We can either do them all in one shot, or we can break them down, do them each individually. What's the board's pleasure? Megan?
Could we break them up just because I wasn't at all of them?
We can.
I would like to two, please.
Nope, that's fine. So first up, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of June 20th. Terry's the first.
I can do that.
Steve's the second. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor of approving the June 20th minutes, raise your hand. Seven, but I didn't get Peter's. His was froze.
Can you hear me, Chris? I vote aye.
Oh, Devin's here too. So Devin was an aye. Peter, what was your vote? Peter, we're still waiting on your vote for.
I think he didn't hear you because he was frozen.
Peter Magnet, we're waiting on your vote for the June 20th. Yeah, okay, there we go. Vote carries 9-0.
And I will have the chat open, Chris, in case anybody feels like they weren't seen. You know, they could put something in the chat.
Yeah, I have the chat open as well. Okay, next up is the meeting minutes of July 7th. Entertain a motion to accept those. Terry's the first. Jen's the second. Any discussion?
Yes, please.
Steve.
Yeah, here at page 3 at the very top. Second sentence there, where it's a price increase. Okay. And the only other thing that I asked is my name. I have two first names.
Oh, I have two first names? Okay, I'll fix your name. Sorry. I was just in that mode of repeating.
That's all right. Beyond that, I'm good.
Any other corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the July 7th minutes as revised, raise your hand. Okay, the motion carries 7-0-2. Yeah, I have 2 abstentions. Devin and Megan abstained. Okay, next up would be July 14th. Entertain a motion to accept meeting minutes of July 14th.
I'll make the motion.
Steve's the first. Need a second. Terry's the second. Any discussion?
I do. Swanton storage shed bid, Swanton storage she bid, page 1. I don't know how meticulous we need to be. I'm maybe being too much.
No, I need to change that to shed. That's a clear difference. So I guess I wanted there to be a woman, but if you and
Well, we talk about the she shed around here all the time, and I just thought maybe we should clean that up.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? Looks to be so. So all those in favor of accepting the July 14th minutes as revised, raise your hand. We just lost Peter. Devin, what is your vote on the 14th?
Aye.
Okay, so the motion carries 8-0. Peter's connection's really bad tonight, and we just lost him again.
Okay.
So next up is July 21st. Entertain a motion to accept the minutes from July 21st. Megan's the first. Terry's the second. Any discussion?
Yes.
Steve?
Page 1 there, Pierrette. I was a little confused. 3/4 of the way down, they agreed on the follow 3 district-wide goals. Should we point out who they are?
yeah, I guess I meant the board, but I can say the board agreed on that if you'd like. Sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Which is they agreed, and I went back and read that a couple of times trying to figure that out, but I think it'd be
Yeah.
easier for others.
Sure. No, that's fine. I'm happy to change it.
It was a slow day at the office. Thank
Okay.
you, Pierre.
Any other revisions?
No.
Okay. All those in favor of accepting the July 21st meeting minutes as revised, raise your hand.
This is Devin. I vote aye.
So that motion also carries 8-0, as I don't believe Peter's come back. So that one's 8-0. On to July 29th.
Chris, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think that we have a guest that has just joined.
Do.
Okay, just making sure.
You do?
Yes, we do.
Oh,
Peter's back.
I would suggest that after you approve all your minutes, you go back and ask if there's community comments again.
yep, will do. Okay, July 29th. Meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion to accept those.
I'll make that.
Steve's first and Megan's the second. Any discussion?
No.
Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor of accepting the July 29th minutes, raise your hand.
Thanks, Pierrette.
This is Devin. I vote aye.
Devin's an aye. And Peter, what's your vote? He's motion carries 9-0. Thank you. So we're done with meeting minutes. Next up, I believe we have a visitor. I'll reopen public comments in case the visitor would like to announce who they are and if they have a comment.
Hi, it's just Gordon and Debbie Winters, just joining in. More curious about the plan for school reopening. That's why we're on.
Okay, sounds good. So next up is new business. First on new business is our SRO grant agreement with Chief Stell. And Chief Stell has joined us tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One of the things that we have a unique opportunity for is we were looking at funding opportunities within the police department and found that the Department of Justice had money that was available for us to use in community policing to include funding a new SRO position. So with that said, the Department of Justice grant fully will fund the position for 3 years, leaving us to create a understanding agreement with the school board to fund basically the 4th year. Beyond that, it's totally, open and out there that we have to just keep that person employed for a 4th year. With that said, I think there's a very unique opportunity for us to help foster some good relationships and some good community mentoring with an SRO in the elementary school. I'm sure some of you have read some of the Vermont Digger and other articles on SROs in regards to some of the disparities that happen across the country and across the state. One of the things that we would have to do with our supervisory union, along with the leadership in those schools, is to make sure that we develop a SRO program for the elementary schools that is very inclusive, so that we're not targeting or singling out any one type of person within our supervisory union. The role of that position is not to be a disciplinarian, but to help foster and promote education, along with dealing with any other issues that the school itself can't handle, where they would need law enforcement intervention. And one of the things that we see across the country is that in an elementary school, the majority of that intervention comes from parents that show up because they're disgruntled or because they have what they feel is a crisis, and they sometimes come with that angry baggage with them, that it's much easier for a law enforcement officer to de-escalate it than it is for the school to de-escalate that. Here in Swanton, we've responded to a couple of those incidents because of our police department being located here. And I'm sure throughout the other portions of the supervisory union in elementary schools across the state, local law enforcement or Vermont State Police have responded to those types of incidents. My goal and hope for this type of program would be that we work as a collaborative team, where the administrative staff of the 3 elementary schools, along with the SRO, get together, create a schedule for that SRO that works along with plans so that they can assist them with issues, say for a concert at night, where they can help with parking, they can help with dealing with those types of things, so that we have a good collaborative effort for the safety of our students and safety of our staff and our community. So there's a lot of advantages to these types of programs. Having been an SRO in the early part of my career in St. Albans, covering at that time I covered 2 schools, the St. Albans City School and BFA. And of those 2 schools, I enjoyed the elementary school so much better. I was able to build a lot of relationships with some very kids that were struggling because they were sort of ostracized by their fellow students because of who they were, where today I still get cards, Christmas cards from a couple of those students, and we're talking 1996 when I was in that role. So that's the kind of relationships that SROs can help in schools. And when I really look at the data, yeah, there is some bad SROs across the country, but the majority of them really have shown some positive things. And looking across our own state, I've seen some really good SRO programs within our own state, both at the high school level and the elementary school level. And that's the kind of program that I would be pitching for us here, being that it's got to be a team approach. We've got to have an MOU in place, and we've got to have boundaries, so that the community knows that the SRO is not in there to say, all right, this child needs to be disciplined or that child needs to be disciplined. That's the role of the school administration, not the SRO. Yeah. The SRO steps in when the school can no longer deal with the situation or needs some guidance or some help that we can, pick up some of those things. The SRO can also help, bridge some of the truancy issues, where talking to the parents in a different light to make sure students are meeting their goals and the parents are meeting their goals. It can also be a good liaison with the school and parents in those types of situations to see how we can help the family unit be successful, making sure their child gets the education that they need and deserve.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've heard from our administrative team a few times about our desire to have, an educational component in our schools and have SROs build relationships with students, reading to kids, doing education around substance abuse or other kinds of abuse, so that, and have safety team meeting presence with our SRO. There certainly are things that come up. We're having an SRO to give an administrator advice about, a possible situation is always very helpful. And we can do the proactive planning with them right at the table as well. The administrators determined that they're going to create a flexible schedule that will share staff between the schools. And there will, special events, but then also be flexible so that if there is an urgent need for an SRO in one building, that we'll make sure that happens as well. Don't know if there are any questions. What we'd be looking for today and get is a motion, should the board want to, would be a motion to approve the addition of an SRO position for the elementary schools.
So at this time, I would entertain a motion, that exact motion to, I'm sorry, how did you word that again?
Motion to approve the addition of an SRO for the elementary schools.
All right, I would entertain a motion to add an additional position of an SRO.
Chris, I think Megan has her hand up.
I think she has a question. Are you first or have a question?
I'm going to first. Whoops.
Okay, so Megan's the first. Don is volunteered to be the second. Discussion.
Chris, I want to do the second, and I'm seconding that motion, but I want to make it clear that when we had a previous discussion on this, I want to make certain that the little town of Franklin school isn't forgotten. I know if you look at numbers, they probably wouldn't come up with a lot of time during the week, but my expectation would be that they maybe get more than their fair share of the time, but it shouldn't be just a few hours a week if somebody's going to go there. So that's not part of the motion. That's just my perspective as we go forward.
Okay. Megan had her hand up and then Terry.
So I would just like to know a bit more about what is going to take place to help ensure that the SRO doesn't, go down that path of sort of identifying students. I want to know more of what that looks like. How are we going to ensure that our students, either of color or students from poverty-stricken families, anything like that, aren't going to be targeted by the SRO? What sort of training?
So within our current law enforcement community, especially with our agency, we do bias-free training every year, along with working within our staff to make sure that we treat our citizens of our community with the same respect that we would want ourselves treated with. And that is by far the emphasis that we have. On a second note, that going down that wrong path would be where our administrative staff has to take a solid role and to help me police the SRO that they don't go down that path, so that they're not overstepping their bounds. And if they're overstepping their bounds, then that SRO would be immediately removed from the school environment, because that would be an inappropriate relationship. The screening process that we have for the SROs would be it's a very simplistic process. We'll recommend an SRO to the school if you folks agree with that, but the administrative team would also interview that person to make sure they're going to have the right personality and the right fit for the school and the school children. I don't want to just grab, a new officer and put them in a school, because that's not a good fit. It's got to be, a seasoned officer who has the patience and wants to work with young children. And when you put that kind of person in a school, then they don't target anybody, because they're there to be the big brother or the big sister or the mentor or the friend to the whole entire student body, not looking at what the person wears for clothing, not what the person looks like, or behaves like. A good SRO going into an elementary school knows that there's going to be young kids with behavioral issues. Those behavioral issues aren't the responsibility of the SRO. Those behavioral issues are the responsibility of the behavioral team that is working with that student to deal with them.
Mhm.
Those are better set with those types of people. The SRO that currently we're going to be potentially recommending for the school has a tremendous amount of training in behavioral issues, substance abuse issues, currently is a licensed paramedic in the state of Vermont, just as I am, and has been in law enforcement, I think, for 17 years. So it's not a person that wants to go in and see how many check boxes that he can make. It's more on how many friends that he can make and how many good relationships, and bring that child up that needs a buddy for the day, is what we're looking at. I don't know if
Thank
I
you.
answered your question.
Yes, yeah, you did. Thank you very much.
Terry.
And actually, you answered my questions too. I was kind of some of the same concerns Megan had, but I've seen you do great work. And so I have a lot of trust in that, especially when you say the administrators will be talking to you if anything's going awry, and that you'll deal with any issues, and that this person will have great training. All of that sounds really good. There was one thing I wanted to say, but I can't think of or ask you, but yeah, you already even addressed one of my other things, which was how do you measure if it's successful? And you already talked about it by the rapport that's built, relationships, things like that. So that's good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Peter.
So, Chris, can you remind me of the financing? We have a grant for 3 years, I believe, and then we're required to take on the fourth year, and what are those costs?
That's correct. It is the grants for 3 years. We take on the fourth. I'd have to ask Laura what the cost would be.
I think I have that number more than, I don't know if
Sorry.
Laura has it.
I
But
don't have it.
we would be looking approximately, because we have 2 SROs. Right now, we currently pay for an SRO. We have a grant that would actually help reduce those costs in the future. And so we'd get some savings there as well. But the average cost of an SRO contract per person is $75,000, which is the salary and benefits, and usually training. And we're looking at something in line with that, which is essentially something we would then have to, should the board approve, then we would manage for that cost in budgeting.
Are we committed beyond the 4 years?
No.
You're not committed beyond the fourth year.
Chris, I just added another community member.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor of extending to a second SRO via the grant, raise your hand.
This is Devin, I vote aye.
And with Devin, that's 9. Motion carries 9-0. Thank you very much, Chief Stell.
All right. Do you have any other questions before I sign off?
I don't. Does anyone else? I see no. Everybody's shaking their head no. So thank you very much and have a good night.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, wait a minute. Don has a question.
I just wanted to ask Chief if he's not stealing the guy at MVU to go to elementary schools, is he?
No, I am not.
Thank you.
I have a potentially another good candidate, as long as the administrative team likes that candidate. Same kind of personality.
Thank you, Chris. Good. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up, we're still in new business. Next up is information. It's a COVID-related financial update.
Okay, I don't have a lot of new information, but I just wanted to ensure the board that we are paying attention to the CRF funds and the information that we're receiving, and more importantly, VASBO, the Association of School Business Officials, I think I mentioned last meeting, is sort of working collaboratively to gain more clarification on these different funds, the uses of the funds, and what the short-term and long-term impact on the ed fund will be, so that we're making the best use of these funds possible. I was sharing with Julie today that I feel a little bit like we're leading sort of the state in this information and sort of helping them understand what they're saying and what the rules are that they've made. But mostly what I wanted to share today is there's those two pools of money, and the grant application is open for the CRF funds. We did receive a grant application. We have not applied yet. I don't believe there's, at least as of last week, there wasn't a school district that had applied for those funds yet. But they're basically the coronavirus relief funds and what we classify as ESSER funds, and they're breaking them into two categories. So there's unexpected and unbudgeted costs that were incurred due to COVID, and then there's budgeted costs that you budgeted for, but you repurpose those funds for something that was COVID related. The second batch, the ones that you budgeted but you used for something different, is the category 2 kind of pool, and that's where we're being told that's what will help the ed fund as a whole. So basically, we would put in reimbursement for those funds. Something like paraprofessionals that we kept paying, but we were utilizing them to help hand out meals or for different purposes, something like that would qualify. And that we would receive that money as a grant revenue in fiscal year 21, but they would then retain that out of the fiscal year 21 ed fund payments that we receive. So basically that's how it's helping the ed fund, is from reducing the payments and replacing that money with grant revenue. The VASBO group is trying, again, very hard to be consistent across the state. So, you know, Swanton or MVSD is not seeking reimbursements for different things than some of the other school districts, so that there's some equity there. And that's one of the things that the state seemed to be not really understanding why we would want to approach it that way. But it definitely makes sense. We should all be contributing to the larger kind of purpose. And so that's what we're doing. Other than that, we will be also applying for the food service related, the summer food service related reimbursements. MVSD, prior to this funding becoming available, decided to stop the delivery of food over the summer because we didn't know how we would pay for it, and just logistically and staffing wise, it was going to be a very difficult task. So we have pickup only over the summer. So we're incurring very little costs over the summer for additional food support. But we will be applying for that separate pool of money for the summer food service program pieces as well. That's probably about it.
Okay.
Somebody has questions.
Yeah. Any questions? Seeing none.
Question. I think somebody's ahead of me.
No, I believe you're up, Don.
Okay. I don't know if this is a question or a suggestion, but I was talking with some people at another school district last week, and based on that, I guess I'm asking how difficult it would be once a month at one of our meetings each month to just give a listing. I'm not saying approval, but just a listing on anything that was purchased because of the COVID-19 virus, just the item and how much it is. And then if you know where the revenue is going to come, it'd be nice to know, but I'm not so interested in that right now as just to get an idea, because this is going to accumulate a pretty good tab before we're done. And I just think, I don't know how difficult it is to pull on the purchase orders, but if we just had a listing each month, they became cumulative, the board would have some sense as we go into budget building, what money we've used that we didn't really intend to use. Then we'll have to have the debate of how we're going to cover it if we don't get money. So anyway, it's a suggestion I'd like to throw out there. I don't know if anybody else is interested in that kind of information, but I think doing it monthly, we won't forget something and then all of a sudden realize we put ourselves in a bad situation.
Sure. So we're coding everything with obviously a COVID code. We use 19. Imagine that.
Right.
So it is easy to identify, but part of what we're trying to clarify as a large professional group is what really qualifies as a COVID cost. What we buy laptops for teachers every year and we buy Chromebooks every year, but maybe we had to buy 2 more. Or we have a huge increase in unemployment costs right now that was unanticipated. I don't know if that's going to qualify for COVID right now or which pool of money that will come from. So some of those are a little difficult to identify, but I can still make you aware at least that they're there. And then, there's other items like gloves and masks and, special remote learning software. Those are easier to identify. So I might have to break it into a couple categories, but definitely something we can do.
And Laura, I'm not, as I said, I'm not looking at this point for approval. I think awareness is, you used awareness. I think that's more where I'm at. I don't know, maybe the other board members think it's overkill, but I just think that this thing is going to multiply exponentially, I feel. And so I think the awareness, we had all these unemployment claims that we didn't expect. It's going to cost X number of dollars. At this point in time, that's an awareness. It's not a case that the board didn't know.
Sure.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Laura. We will move on. Okay, next up is presentations. And the big presentation is the MVSD reoccupancy plan and reopening framework.
Yes, so I will kick it off and give you an overview of our framework. There's absolutely no way that this is a presentation that is comprehensive or hits the entirety of what reopening is, but what my pledge to the board has been is that we will have aspects of the plan ready to share with you so that you are updated as we go along. All of these plans are subject to change. Unfortunately, I wish I didn't have to say that. We meet, like this morning, we met for 4+ hours, and people are frustrated because you make a decision and then you think, well, didn't we decide that last week? And what changed between then and now? I have to say this team is amazing, and they've been working tirelessly on all aspects of this plan. So let me start with the framework, which, for heaven's sakes, Julie, I forget I'm presenting. So I have to present something. I can't just click to it. It's not going to do you any good. Here we go. First thing I want to share with you all is our reopening framework. It is not complete, but it is our planning document so that we are hanging our, sometimes procedures or questions we need to ask, etc., are coming out of this document. It's framing our thinking and guiding our planning. So we have an introduction, just really being clear that this is a planning document for reopening, and that the Vermont Department of Health and Agency of Education, their guidance and direction is what impacts the direction of this plan. We have our guiding values, which are very important to us, that remote learning opportunities should be considered if possible. that public education is an important lever in economic recovery, that safety of our students and staff is our first priority, that equity is very important to us. All of these issues and guiding values have driven our work together and will continue to do that. Just as I've shared with the board before, we have a steering committee that is a group of all of our administrators, some teachers, our union leadership, parents, facility directors. It's a pretty comprehensive group of about 20 people or more. And we meet regularly. We have very long meetings. We have multiple meetings a week. And within that group, people break up into task teams. And I will share with you, our task teams are teaching and learning, logistics, which includes facilities and busing and food service. We have health and safety, which is about our medical response, and our nursing team is working there. And then our central office team is basically working on HR issues and communication. The members of the steering committee are there, but essentially we have these different aspects of the planning, and we are planning for 3 different steps. The step 1 is where we were in the spring, and we need to potentially go there again should things go in that direction, and that's where schools are closed, everything is remote. And then we have to plan for a step 2, which is where we're told we're going to start, which is a sort of medium level of risk, where we have more enhanced safety guidelines in place. We have greater physical distancing. Kids have to stay in place. Students are not mixing or congregating. A lot of spaces are closed, and that we really are cleaning and disinfecting on a particular schedule, absolutely every day, multiple times a day. And we'll talk more about that. But as you can see, we have teaching and learning, we have food service issues that are concerned, transportation issues, the use of facilities by outsiders, and those pieces. These topics have pretty much been agreed to across our region. We have conversations between superintendents. There are 16 of us in Champlain Valley, and we talk about things such as the use of building and grounds, and we dig into those, the guidance, and have those conversations so that we all feel like we're using the same lens, both regionally and then in our district teams. So it's been a very comprehensive time. There are hundreds and hundreds of hours that have gone into this work. My plan today is to have you start with what the planning has happened in the logistics team. I'm going to scroll down here till I get, you can see there are a lot of considerations. The logistics team, Justina and Dan have led that team. Laura, Paul Gregoire, Steve Ballard, Jason Butler, Scott Martin, the 2 bus companies, and Franklin Foods and the Abbey have all been parts of that committee. And I've been part of that committee off and on as well. And they have been working through all kinds of issues. And I'm going to stop presenting here. And you are not seeing this Dan, do you want me to present, or do you want to present?
However you'd like to do it. You can, if you want to do it, and then you can go seamlessly into Justina later. That'd be fine.
Okay. So what we're going to start with in this, as you could see in that framework, it's 16 pages of just topics that need to be considered. So from that, we then develop more detailed plans, whether it's in teaching and learning or communication, etc. The biggest one by far is the logistics team, the facility plan, which is called the reoccupancy plan, We had support from an organization working with our Vermont School Board Insurance Trust to guide us through. We had a good template from them, so it's very comprehensive. And I will share it, and Dan is going to speak first, and then Justina will carry on. We're not going to read the whole plan to you, but we're going to give you highlights.
I thought you want me to read the whole thing. All right. Okay. No, I have the first 9 pages. So it's the reoccupancy plan was created by a bunch of us working in conjunction with our facilities directors. Julie, if you want to keep going and scrolling on down, I'm just going to highlight some of the things that are on the reoccupancy plan. And obviously you guys can go further, take a further deep read into it as you'd like. Talks about some of the district cleaning program and how we as a district, how we as MVSD are going to go about cleaning the building. That would be in the morning, in the afternoon, and the evening. You'll also see some various links on there throughout this document. And you'll also see some parts that are yellow. The parts that are yellow, that are highlighted yellow, are parts that we still need to complete or are still waiting some further guidance on. So we've asked the facility directors in conjunction with us to come up with what does a daily custodial checklist look like, and what is the cleaning products that you're going to be using during this time. And so we'll put those links into that document. And we've kicked around a lot, the difference between cleaning and disinfecting and what that entails. We've also gone and we're working with the Health and Safety Task Force, with Yeshua's group, around suspected and confirmed positive cases and what that's going to look like and what our protocol would be if something were to happen. There's levels and frequency of cleaning. So we have taken a look at all of those. We have making sure that everybody that comes into our buildings, that works in our buildings, have the VOSHA requirements, which is the Vermont Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and the document that says that they've read through that 56-page slide. I believe it's 56 to 55 pages slides, so that they understand what cleaning and disinfecting looks like. We've talked about playground equipment and how for the elementary schools, playground equipment will not be able to be used this year. Buses, and we've talked with the bus companies, both M&C Transport and with Grand Avenue around, and we continue to work with them around the disinfecting daily after each run. So after the morning run and after the afternoon run, and disinfecting during that time and making sure that the buses are clean, and obviously working with them on where kids can sit and how many kids are sitting there, and making sure that the little kids are in the front and the older kids are in the back. We've talked about personal space. Yep, you can keep on going. There's a lot of different parts to this. Talks about PPE and protective personal equipment and what some of those are and what we're allowed to use. The staffing determinations, the cleaning staff went into in depth about how our custodial staff needs to be trained and how we're going to have a district-wide training for all of our custodial staff so that everybody's on the same page and everybody hears the same wording around that and what that's going to look. We'll cross-train staff, to make sure that we have backup staff in case somebody's out. We talk about the various the various cleaning products that we can use. The physical distancing protocols and what that's going to look like in each and every building. We at MVU we're maintaining 6 feet. That was the guidance that we received, and we're maintaining 6 feet. And all of our desks right now are spaced out in classrooms, and Paul's gone in with his staff and spaced them all out at 6 feet so that we can see exactly how many students we can get into classrooms. Below that, the grid you're seeing right there, that is our blue and white day grid. On Mondays, we will have the students who have been identified as the blue group, the kids that are coming on blue days. They will be in person on those days, and the virtual group will be the kids that are coming in on the white days. And obviously we go with a Monday, Thursday grouping and a Tuesday, Friday grouping. And the main reason for that is we didn't want to go 5 straight days without seeing students. That was something that we really picked up from the springtime, was not being able to see kids for a long time. So if they had a question and they weren't able to get it answered, we didn't want to have them go a full 5 days without being able to physically see a teacher. So operations, the document goes into how we're going to train staff, how we're going to train the cleaning staff, and making sure that everybody understands what they're actually going to be doing. We talk about space modifications and how traffic flow patterns are going to be and how desk spacing is going to be. And, for some of the pods like C, E, and D pods, there'll be one-way traffic going around the pods, but some of the other ones like A, F, and J will have actually stanchions in the middle so that traffic will be able to go one way and come on the other side. In Swanton, it talks about how desks will be spaced 6 feet apart and forward-facing. One-way traffic flow when possible. And the same with Highgate and Franklin. They will most likely have the stanchions in the middle as well because of the one hallways not being able to redirect traffic around. Isolation areas, that is something that we are still working on. I don't know. I don't want to say that it's fully vetted out yet. But one of the requirements from this is that we must have an isolation area in case we believe that we have somebody who may be COVID positive or developing symptoms. So it must be an area where, we can put somebody that's, so it's vented to the outside and it has access to a window and it has access to a door, all going to the outside. So all the facility directors and the administration are still looking at that. We go into shared spaces and what those look like, front lobbies and how we'll have 6-foot spacing there. We talk about what libraries will look like, gyms, gymnasiums. For the most part, we're not going to be able to have PE. That is part of the requirement, is not being able to have PE indoors. You can have it outdoors, but you can't have it indoors. So, what gyms are going to look like. And so in some of the elementary schools, they'll be used for storage and other things. It goes into shared spaces, goes down to some of the guidelines or some of the guidance there that we've used to help make those decisions. So the sneeze guards or plexiglass, we'll be using some of those at MVU in rooms A30 and A41, which are both science rooms. They have the immovable desks, the old big old lab tables that are there. Those are unable to be moved, so we will put some plexiglass in there for those. And on the food delivery carts that we'll be using to go around to each individual classroom within the pod. Highgate will install some guards. Franklin will be using social distancing measures and have some guards put in the main office area. And plexiglass is a little bit tough to come across right now, but our facility directors are on it. Some of the amenities, food services, break rooms, talks a little bit about, that we're going to put a maximum number of people allowed in those areas. Signage up saying that, you can't have a certain number of people in more than this in there. Like in the MBU faculty lounge, you used to put 20 people in there for lunch. That can no longer happen. So a lot of them will be moved to the classrooms. In regards to food service, for MVU, food will be brought by the Abbey service, and that'll be that way for all of the elementary schools. With Franklin, the Franklin Hot Lunch program will also be delivering to classrooms. You can't have those shared areas any longer. It goes a little bit more in depth in regards to the gymnasiums and the locker rooms, just saying that they're really kind of off limits, as well as locker rooms, playing fields, and playgrounds. No bleachers will be out there. Bleachers are going to it's just asking for people to congregate on them. So by removing the bleachers and asking people to space out if there are athletic events. And the same will be playground structures are not to be utilized during or at Swanton, Highgate, and Franklin. Again, high touch surfaces. We go into what high touch surfaces are. Those are doorknobs in the front office areas and how they will be disinfected during the middle part of the day. Nurse's office, those areas, places that are those high areas where there's a lot of foot traffic and a lot of people. Goes into some of the communal spaces, large group activities, and public use. As of right now, the buildings are really kind of off use to outside agencies and outside organizations. We do have to list on there when we are going over the safety measures with our school personnel for the in-service. Then you can see most schools are covering either August 17th or on the 18th. Volunteers, subs, visitors. We're still looking for some guidance on that, but main occupancy. But largely, people from the outside coming into our building, is got to be by appointment only, and it's very much going to be restricted. So, unfortunately, gone are the days where the parent comes in and wants to have a meeting with you right away. They're going to have to call and schedule an appointment for anybody that they want to come on in and see. Goes into a little bit more about student teachers. We've agreed as an MVSD not to have student teachers for at least the fall, that we're going to revisit it in the spring. Some physical security measures. It just wants to make sure that everything is up to code, that everything works. So all access systems, locks are all operating in all the schools. All the doors latch. Yep. All the windows latch. Yep. Everything functions properly. Yes. The wedges have been removed. Those are the little things that put in the door to keep them open. The roof access is secured. We just make sure, people can't get up there. Oh, there we go. Changes to messages and signage. Paul Gregoire and some of the other facility directors have ordered some signage to be put on the wall, letting them know which direction traffic is going to be going. And changes to the facility to help with screening of visitors. Front office personnel need to be trained on what that's going to look like, so that we have just one place that people are coming in, not multiple places. We do not have a touchless entry system. Yeah, that's my part. Justina.
Yeah, just to kind of continue and bring you through to the end of this, the building considerations and modifications, such as staffing here. We've got a meeting coming up this week to work with HR and Laura to, there's some added, I don't want to say positions, but there's some added duties that need to be figured out, such as manning a meals table in the evenings, and also health screeners on the buses in the morning. So we're going to be coming together this week now that we kind of have some of the framework of those two things flushed out, to work on figuring out staffing for that and how to do that in a cost efficient way, and while still getting the jobs done. Going down, it touches on cross training of staff again. I think Dan touched on that earlier. It does kind of dip into some of these topics multiple times on here. Needing to cross train our custodial group too. You never know if someone's going to be out, needs to cross train, be it reallocated to a different school or what have you. So just kind of having everyone on the same page will be important. Scrolling down, physical distancing protocols were kind of touched upon. That's a little bit of a repeat. Training and documentation. What other training and documentation needs to be put in place? We talked about the VOSHA training for everyone, but also ensuring that we have evidence of that on site for each of our vendors and contractors that are coming into the buildings. Indoor environmental controls. I'm not going to lie, I've learned a lot more about things like HVAC and air flushing than I ever really thought was necessary. HVAC, it's their time to shine right now. But Laura's really worked hard with the facility managers on this in regards to needing to change out filters a lot more, keeping the air handlers going more. And there's just kind of a lot more to that to keep the schools up and running. But a lot of attention is being placed on those three areas as well. Same with the water and wastewater systems. Transportation. Let's see here. I touched on that too. That came up in the earlier system. Needing to add those health screeners in the morning. We're going to be staffing those buses, we believe at this time, unless guidance changes, to have a health screener on each bus. We're going to have a lot more control and knowledge of who's getting on the bus. I think at the elementary levels, naturally we have that. The kids are just younger, but at the high school, I mean, if we remember from our days, the bell rings, you just go get on the right bus and you go. So for contact tracing purposes, just kind of needing to button that up quite a bit. And the bus companies, like Dan said, they're working really hard on their cleaning measures, making sure that their drivers, they have all their positions filled for drivers, and they're doing their own health screenings in the mornings as well. Some of this stuff is just making sure power systems, pest management, making sure we're up to date on that. Signage and wayfinding was covered already. Integration with existing facility plans and projects. That previous document that Julie showed, that's kind of going to probably be a home where all of these different programs and policy procedures all kind of get linked together. So you've got everything in kind of a one-stop location. Planning for an organized shutdown. I don't really believe I think that's really last I read was at the superintendent level with the health department, and that memo today even said as something as small as a classroom shutdown went through that level. So we would be taking the latest guidance and kind of embedding that into our plan. And like Dan and Julie have said, it changes all the time. So food service, the big thing with food service, not a lot of changes as far as equipment per se, but when we work with our food service groups, we're trying to tackle two different things at once: how to feed these kids in the classroom and get those systems going, ordering forms and all of that. We also need to prepare and plan for feeding our kids who are remote days. So, or families that are fully remote. So we kind of have two different meal programs that we're trying to create right now. And we've been working hard within that group to do that. There's a lot to it. Let's see, communication. I think as we get our bigger frameworks done, we'll be working on communication with families and students on, you know, preventing the spread and what they can do to create those healthy environments. Let's see here. Training on the reoccupancy plan. We all shared the date. Not only our custodians going through, our facility managers going through this reoccupancy plan with their custodians and the ins and outs. We in turn, as principals, are going through this reoccupancy plan in a lot more detail than you guys are getting right now during in-service. So all of the teachers and staff know what went into the reopening and feel safe and supported, and we're all operating on the same page. Measurement, monitoring, and plan updates. We've put some information in here, but we've got more work to do, just how we're going to continually reassess where we're at, what's working, what's not working. If we get in and open at step 2, and then we get guidance that we can go to step 3, being able to go back and revisit, you know, what do we want to do differently if we have to dip back into step 2 and step down. So just working at the school level with parents, with our board and the superintendent to take all that feedback and kind of make our improvements as we go. Other facility considerations, health and safety. Down here is really where all that work from the health and safety task force is going to kind of get, I want to say dumped in here, but this is kind of our worksheet that we have. What are our health screenings looking like? We thought we had that squared away. We heard that there might be new guidance issued on that, so we might have to go back to the drawing board and start all over again. But what are our systems for screenings on the bus, screenings at school, screenings for students, visitors, staff each day? And then what in turn do those protocols look like? Dan mentioned the isolation rooms and the nurse. I think the days are kind of over for a little bit right now where Johnny's got a loose tooth and he gets to go down to the nurse's office and, you know, he's so excited, and we just got to find a way to do those things the same way so that they're still magical for kids, but it happens in the classroom. So we got to come up with our different processes and protocols for, you know, accessing the nurse. And that might look like the nurse is coming to the classrooms and doing it that way. So, and then buses and transportation, that's kind of a repeat. What would we do with an outbreak with someone on the bus per se? What does that look like for busing? And this is, I think our last thing here is arrival and departure, which a lot of schools, I would say, are spending a lot of time on this. I think we can't have large groups and kind of open the floodgates and the kids go out and we've got 100 parents like at Babcock in the Babcock gym or what have you. They want staggered arrival and dismissal time. So schools are working on creating processes to get kids in and screened and kind of have a solid start time to preserve education and learning while still meeting all of these requirements. And it's the same for departure, which is actually It's pretty hard. I feel like we spent a lot of time on it. So that's kind of our summer. Fair to say?
Absolutely. And again, yes, I mean, even just today, some of our conversations involved, oh, we have to update this in the plan. Don't forget, we have to put this link in here. It changes regularly. All of these documents have to be dynamic living documents so that we can go to them when we need them and see whatever the protocol is. Every time it says protocol, you've got a team of people developing, for example, staff need to screen. So every staff member, every NCSS worker, every, person coming into the school will take their temperature and will fill out a Google form certifying that they have not been, around anyone with COVID symptoms, that they don't have symptoms themselves, et cetera. We're all familiar with those questions. We'll have to do that every single day and take our temperature. Every student, we were thinking we would be able to have like a ticket system for most students and sort of facilitate screening coming in. And it looks like even if mom takes a temperature at home, we're still going to have to take a child's temperature when they come either on the bus or at school. So a large part of why hybrid makes sense, even the governor has admitted that hybrid makes sense, is that we have a lot of routines and procedures to teach children, and doing it with 650 kids or 280 kids or at capacity makes it very difficult to teach the children what they need and to really practice those routines and get them under our belt.
Julie, can I just say one thing? Dina and I were just chatting, going through this reoccupancy plan and all the links and the processes seems really kind of sterile, and it's sad. And I know we have parents that have joined us here, and I want parents to know, and the public that might watch this, that school is still going to be fun for kids. I mean, we're still working really hard at that, and we want school to be a place that kids want to come to and enjoy. Kindergartners, I mean, this is a terrible way to start kindergarten. So we don't want to lose sight of those things. This was just a kind of down and dirty reoccupancy plan, but trying to keep the magic of school for kids for sure at the same time. I just don't want to lose sight of that.
Thank you for that. A couple other things that I wanted to point out is one, we will have a virtual town meeting. We'll have a town meeting virtually on Thursday. A reminder, save the date went out. And it is for folks who are interested in a completely remote option. So we will have someone from the Vermont Virtual Learning Collaborative, Jen DeSorger and Kosha Patel will be joining me. I will moderate questions, and the director of VTVLC, the Virtual Learning Collaborative, principal, if you will be there to answer the questions. So it is important that we know exactly how many people, down to Jen DeSorger's 2 children, are going to be doing Vermont, VTVLC, what school they go to, what grade they're in, et cetera. We need that level of specificity by next week so that we can then determine, we have an estimate of how many teachers we need. These things don't happen without committing dedicated staff all year to doing this. But it's important to us that families with health conditions, first and foremost, have that service. And then if we're able to support other families, we can have a process for that too. But it's an important option, particularly for those with medical conditions, so that their families feel safe and supported. So that information will be Thursday at 6 o'clock. So anyone who is interested in joining that, I would encourage you to do that.
I see Megan with her hand up.
So thank you. I have a a couple questions. First, so the meeting on Thursday, from what I'm hearing, is the remote learning that would take place as part of participating in the hybrid model is that going to be different than what it's going to look like if I'm fully remote?
Yes. So your virtual learning, your remote days, and we have a document that's nearly finished that's going out this week as well that gives a little overview for families about what in-person looks like and what remote would look like on the 3 days that students are learning remotely. Much of that will be asynchronous. There'll be some morning meetings, there'll be check-ins opportunities, and there'll be independent work. So it's a combination of those things. But students will be learning in person 2 days of the week. For those who want a completely remote option, that's a whole other curriculum. That's a whole other job. We talked about trying to do it ourselves. It ends up being just twice the work for educators, and we really can't do that. So the Vermont Virtual Learning Collaborative, we give so many teachers to that collaborative, and that gives us so many seats, and that they have full, and Jen will jump right in because she knows a lot more than I do, but they have a full curriculum. You might be taught by MVU teachers. You might be taught by another Vermont licensed teacher that works with the collaborative. They have a full offering of courses. It will look very different. But for some of our families, they, have reasons why their kids can't go into school. This is a very solid option for them. Jen, do you have more to add?
I can just add a little bit. VTVLC has been an organization in Vermont that's been in existence for a little over 10 years. Up until this point, they've been working primarily with students in grades 6 through 12, but they're expanding their offerings to the elementary level. In this time of need, I think they're really stepping up and providing options for schools and students. At this time, they're going to expand to probably one of the largest schools in the state just over the next month or so. So we've been really appreciative of their responsiveness. They've been super supportive. Kosha and I are emailing them, a couple times a day, and they get back to us right away. We asked them today for this town hall meeting on Thursday, and they said, yep, absolutely. Here's a model of a slideshow that you could use. They've been a very good organization to work with.
And just sort of to follow up on that piece with Julie, what you said of having to know, basically by next week, a commitment by families who are going to do the fully remote option. I know for my family, at least, one of the biggest considerations for us is how much do I have to be the teacher in this? Yeah. And I know that things are going to be different from spring, and I am very glad to hear that. But without knowing what it looks like and what the expectations are on parents to fill in that teaching role, I'm not sure. I just want to make sure that parents have the information they need to be able to make that decision by next week. And right now, as a parent, I don't feel like I have that.
Yeah. That's why we thought that town hall was really important. It gives people an opportunity to ask the director of that program specifically. Those are questions I can't answer, but the experts, because parents are going to have really specific questions, and we want them to be able to have that. So I would encourage you to participate in the town hall Thursday at 6 o'clock.
Terry, then Dawn.
I just wanted to ask and also say something. I think you're going to get a lot. I think you should want to prepare yourselves, because I think there's going to be a lot of parents who go to the Thursday night meeting asking you what the hybrid model is going to look like, because I think that's what people are most concerned about. But I heard you say that you don't have the details yet. I mean, that was like military precision on everything you just told us tonight. Is it a lot harder to come up with what we're talking about, the students and the teaching and the curriculum and the 2 days and hybrid? Is that what's happening?
We
I mean,
do.
can I just add one thing? If I was a teacher, I'd be worried too, not knowing, like, I think a lot of teachers prepare in the summer and
Yes.
they don't even know yet what platforms or what they're going to be using.
We do have some information, as I said, some of that will be able to go out this week. It's pretty broad information about what the expectations are in the 3 remote days and the in-person days. I spent the weekend and yesterday putting it together from a template, but I still need, I'd share it with you tonight, except I still need our administrative team to review it with a laser-like focus before it goes out to the community. But it should be going out this week. So people have more of an idea of, and again, not at the curricular level. That's going to be, you know, the classroom teachers working together at 3rd grade, determining what, you know, what their lessons are going to look like. But essentially, we have some minimum instructional hours that need to happen. So there will be regular contact with families, and we need to make sure that children and families are connecting every day in some format. And then when we have work that gets done at each grade level, there are different hours of requirement for minimum education, and we have to make sure we're providing opportunities for students to meet those.
Yeah, trust me, you guys have done a job no one else could do. I'm just saying, I think that you're going to have some of that confusion on Thursday night.
Yep.
And I don't know how you're going to prepare for it unless you already have it distributed or something. Good luck. Thank you.
Don.
Yeah.
Can't hear you, Don.
There we go. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I took my finger off too soon. Jan or Julie, congrats on doing the thing Thursday night. Will the parents be told then, or is this something that's in your bailiwick? They opt for the virtual, with the compact. Do they have the flexibility of moving out of that if it doesn't seem to meet their needs? Or are we obligated once we start to responsible for those students?
Jen, do you want to take that? You were eloquent about that earlier today.
Sure, I can talk about that a little bit. So VTVLC is asking that entry and exit of the program happen around the semester point. So if we have a semester break that it's not working for a student, then they could choose to exit the program and rejoin the hybrid model or whatever model we're in at that point. That's probably going to work really well for students probably through grade 8. When you get to the high school, they will be operating in a semester-based model, and we're condensing our classes into semester-long classes next year just to help minimize the mixing. So it might not work well for a student who's in high school to exit the program or enter the program at the semester point, just so that they can meet all of their credit requirements. I think that the program will be flexible within the first couple of weeks of the school year. They have been operating long enough to know that often at the start of a semester that students and families might change their mind about what's a good fit. So I think that they will be flexible within a window at the beginning of each semester, but probably not continuously throughout the semester.
And just a little aside, is Claire DeSawyer?
Oh, I can't hear you, Don.
I said, is Claire DeSawyer going to be an instructor in that program?
No, she's a little young for providing instruction, though I'm sure she would tell you exactly what she's thinking.
Okay, I believe Peter, I saw his hand up, but at the moment, for me, his screen's froze. Is there any other questions, or if Peter can hear me, if you have a question? Joanne.
So I do have a quick question, but first I just want to say, kudos to the whole team and task force. I can't even imagine what you guys have gone through this summer. So thank you very much for the endless hours. And it's a quick question. Do all of our families, or do we know, does everyone have access to the internet? Is this something I think we might have run into on a couple families last spring, but how are we looking for the start of the new school year?
So we do know that there are families, we're lucky in that we have a high percentage of families who say they have internet. But how good that internet is, you know, up for discussion, because as we've all experienced in this pandemic, you thought you had good internet until you had your college student and your high school student and the people, adults working, all trying to access the internet at the same time, all in Zoom meetings simultaneously. It just doesn't work. So we definitely are cognizant of that. The public service department is working on a survey. We sent them addresses of students today. They're going to be working to increase access to broadband internet. I don't pretend to be an expert in this area, but they are working to expand that. I would say definitively, if you want a fully remote option for your child, you should have solid internet in your home, because some of it will be offline, but some of it will be online. Just as in the spring, we can be creative with ways for families who have less reliable internet to connect. There will be, just as last time, people had, you know, materials that were sent home if they weren't able to access the LMS system. We use Google Classroom, we use Class Dojo, we use Seesaw. There are a variety of ways for families to access the information in the learning, but it is something we're going to work with every family on. How are you going to access on remote days?
I have one quick question. I get asked this multiple times every day. I know you gave me or us a couple of reasons. You don't want to go 5 days without seeing kids and whatnot. But is there, one of the questions I get asked is why we decided to split up the days instead of grouping them, like having a blue day be Monday, Tuesday, and then the white day be Thursday, Friday, from a cleaning standpoint. Now, I would assume we got to clean the schools every day, no matter how the groups are, how the kids are grouped. But if I had a little more information to give parents or people when they ask me, that would be super handy.
So I'll start, and then I'll throw it to Kosha and Jen to speak about the instructional aspect, or any other principal that wants to speak. Yeshua is nodding, so I'm going to make him talk. But we, the schools chose AA, BB, or AB, based on their particular desires in their school and their model. It has absolutely nothing to do with cleaning. Every school is required to clean multiple times a day. Every school has to be sanitized, disinfected, whatever appropriate word is used, every night, and shut down. We're going to have people exiting the building at certain hours so we can make sure that we have ample time to sanitize the building thoroughly. There will be midday cleaning. Teachers and students will be cleaning surfaces, cleaning up after themselves during lunch. You know, bathrooms will be cleaned multiple times a day. So the idea originally started in the state when we were talking through ways we could handle this, where, you know, oh, we have a group of kids on Monday, Tuesday, and then we deep clean, and then we do Thursday, Friday. And somehow people have sort of hung on to that language, and it's in a lot of people's communication, but we're required to clean deeply, thoroughly, multiple times a day. So I don't want anyone to think that their children are going to be mixing with other kids and we're not cleaning thoroughly between groupings. That's part of why we started with the logistics team, to share with you some of those protocols. Instructionally, the team discussed the multiple models. We even discussed, could we have an A week and a B week, right? There are all kinds of things that we could do. That one fell apart pretty quickly because you'd be not seeing kids for a long chunk of time. But Kosha, Yeshua, do you want to jump in with the instructional reasons for choosing the AB.
Sure. Chris, I'm so glad you asked that question because this is something I really feel very strongly about. We have been using Marzano's instructional framework for 5 years now, and we've been using the strategies very consistently. And one of the things that they highly recommend, which we've been using, is chunking of information. So when you have a kindergartner who comes to school on Monday, you do your direct instruction in the classroom, and then the next day they get work that's based on those lessons from Monday, right? So they're practicing the skills that they learned with their teacher. If you had kindergarten kids coming on Monday, Tuesday, and then you're expecting them to do work on their own independently for 3 days, they're not going to remember what they were taught on Monday. And when they come back the following week, you're going to probably have to reteach what you taught the previous week. So we really thought about our youngest kids. And then when we talked at the high school level, we had, a high school teacher who does AP math, and she said the same thing applies for the high school kids. The other factor we really wanted to keep in mind is that we can use the remote days to have kids practice skills they learned in the classroom, but we could also use those remote days to front load information for the following days. So say, for example, read this article on your remote day. We are going to discuss it the next day. So we thought about all those options. And the other big concern that came up was the social emotional learning. There are students in our schools who, for them, school is a safe and stable place for them. And if one of our biggest concerns was if there are those students who need that support from teachers and there's something going on at home and they're not seeing any other adults for 5 days, they really don't have the kind of support that they need during this difficult time. So we really considered our instructional framework. What are those recommendations in terms of how students learn? And we also considered the social emotional learning aspects, which, as you know, we've talked a lot about it. We are rolling out our pre-K-12 social emotional competencies, which really emphasizes those non-academic skills that students need in order to become successful, not just in school, but also in life. And so there was a lot of consideration, and we really, really strongly feel that based on all the instructional best practices we've adopted in the last 5 years, the chunking of information, practicing and deepening knowledge based on independent work, and then front-loading some information that would help them then be successful when they are in person were all the factors we kept in mind. Yashua, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
I mean, it's really hard to go after Kosha because she's so well-spoken and pretty much said everything I was going to say. But if I could add anything, I think from my parent hat a little bit. So I have a child who, if he was out of school for 5 days, he will need time to come back and understand those rules and procedures, and that might get in the way of those 2 days. And then he'll come back and have the same issue again, probably. And they do say 21 days to make a habit in a row. So if you're constantly having 5 days where kids are not there, it's going to be so hard for them to really understand those rules and procedures. And it's going to be a lot of instructional time loss, and we're already losing some instructional time. So I think it's really important that we are seeing kids as we are, and especially the biggest thing I think about is if a kid is struggling. So if they go to school on Monday, they struggle on Tuesday, or sorry, if they were there Monday and Tuesday, they then struggle Wednesday, they're lost for the next 3 days until a teacher can meet with them and potentially help them work through something. So again, it just seems like lost instructional time, where if you're seeing a kid every 2 or 3 days, you can help them stay on track. Maybe say to the parents, this might be where it kind of fell through. and really help parents pick up what might have gotten in the way. And I think MVSD as a district are quite the forerunners in Vermont for SEL competencies. And if we're really at school and pushing those competencies while kids are there, they're going to actually take that home. And when they're dealing with things at home, they'll remember these self-regulation, executive functioning skills that we're giving to them, where it's happening every few days versus front loading every 2 days, as Kosha kind of, spoke about chunking versus, a lot at once. And that for me, actually, again, as a parent, my son was someone who would use strategies, talk to him. And when he went remote, he lost some of those. And I remember we even reached out to the guidance counselor and said, can you send us a list of things of strategies you used to use? And we put those right back, and that helped him. But not all parents would have the access or the, willingness to reach out, so to speak. So yeah, I just think the model we chose was something we spent a long time debating, and not just in the task force, but I remember that Julie at one point said to the task force, I want to bring this back up, this discussion of the AB versus the AA, because people around us are not doing the same thing. And the task force, we reached out to Julie and said, can you come to our meeting right now? And of course, Julie, within like 40 minutes, showed up. We discussed it before going back to the steering committee. And even at the steering committee, which again, over 20 people said, we chose this for a reason. We debated it. We had the pros and cons. We feel like this is the best direction for our student population. And so just like Coach, I feel very confident with this model. And I actually have also been asked by parents, right? Because I live right in Swanton, and they have asked me, how come this model? And I think it's helpful when we can explain why we chose to go in that direction we did. I really wish, kind of like a board meeting tonight being recorded, I wish we could record every meeting and they could see how thoughtful all the questions we've brought up. And even as administrators saying, I don't think I agree with you. Can you explain your thinking a little bit more? And it's been some incredible work. So that's why I already commented. I'm very proud of the work that we've done. And we still have work to do.
Oh, yeah.
Things are ever changing. But especially with this hybrid model, I fully support it.
Thank you.
Of course.
Peter.
A couple questions. First, the busing. So if the buses aren't at capacity, does that mean that there's going to be more bus routes? So I'm assuming we're going to see an added expense for busing cost. The other question I had was, you had like 3 tiers or levels that we're going to be at, and who is going to be deciding when we have to step down? And if we ultimately have to go back to what we were in the spring, is that the Secretary of Education's call? Who makes that call? And is it going to be made for all the schools together? Or if there's a problem in Franklin, would they close the Franklin school but be able to keep the other schools open? How does that work?
Those are 2 great questions. I'll answer the bus question first. We are working with the bus companies on what the routes will be. We want to encourage as many families as can to transport their own children so that there are fewer kids on buses. We will have different bus arrival times than drop-off arrival times. We're working through that. It's a logistical challenge. We are working on, we're not going to be having busing on Wednesday, so we should not have additional bus costs. We're going to work with the bus companies, though, if there's a need for supplying materials or supplies or cleaners, we will work with the bus company on those things to try and to support them as well. Those are conversations we still have to continue. We will likely be looking at routes, because when I know exactly who in West Swanton needs a bus ride and who is driving their child, we can rearrange routes to be as efficient as possible and to keep kids on the bus short a period of time. I mean, we heard today that, the windows on the bus have to be open, so every day there's a new thing. So we want to keep kids the fewer kids on the bus, the better for us. But we don't have, we do not have a restriction right now on busing. People have talked about kids every other seat sitting in the middle at those kinds staggered. We're not in that step for busing. To answer your second question, the Secretary of Ed reissued, the guidance we talked about the other week, where he talked about, they clarified that to say school districts make decisions. And one of the things that they said very clearly was the Secretary of Ed is not going to have anything to do with school closures or what step we're in.
Good.
That is going to be the Department of Health. So if things are, right now, we're very solidly in a step 2. They want us in step 2. They want us to go in and practice at a more restrictive stage. And then if things loosen up, our hope is with changing guidance, our teams will work together and determine what we can do for the looser stage. But we need to know how to be in the more restricted stage. So it is likely that as we move into, things will loosen up in, say, 3 weeks of school. And then flu season hits. And so then we will, perhaps, the Department of Health would say, everybody's going back to step 2. And then we have to move into a more restrictive model. This is going to be really challenging for families and teachers. There is no question. At the very least, we're going to have some kids in school, and it's going to be better than the spring. I tell myself that every day. It is going to be better than the spring. And if things get, very bad, and our Dr. Mark Levine, I don't know how he does it. He's so optimistic. He looks at all of these models and all of this data, and he feels very solidly that the Northeast will not likely become a giant hotspot the way Arizona and Texas and Florida have become. And now things are going through the Midwest, and it's very concerning. He feels that we will hopefully not have to go into the most restrictive step 1, everybody's fully remote step again. So our hope is that we're moving from a step 2 to step 3 and maybe back to step 2, from the medium to looser models. That's our hope. Obviously, if there is an incident in a particular school, the nurse is contacting me and contacting the Department of Health. It is very unlikely that a school will be closed because of illness of an individual, unless, boy, the whole school is ill. It is more likely that a classroom space is closed, it is cleaned. Students, if they need to be learning in the cafeteria for the next 24 hours, that they go there and then they come back into the clean space a day later. So those kind of protocols, some of that guidance keeps shifting a little bit, but we will have those kind of protocols in place. So it is very unlikely that an individual school will close. It would be more likely that the whole state gets, or a region has an outbreak. I know that Manchester, superintendent down there, even though it turned out not to be an outbreak, people are very nervous. So they're starting in a very restrictive model and then easing back. I can see that if there was an outbreak, Franklin County might be moved to one step or another. But as a state, I think they're saying it's unlikely. I'm not a betting woman, so I just know we have to be planful for every eventuality, because I think we're going to see a little bit of everything.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Jen.
Sorry, trouble on my microphone. One of the things I'm getting asked about by parents is the busing versus the drop-off. Yeah. So I think a lot of parents thought, as I did, that when you were going to drop your child off, you were going to pull up, let them out, you take off, you go to work. whether it be, because some parents working from home, some parents having to actually physically go to work. And so I'm hoping that it gets really clarified to them before they make their decision that somebody actually has to come up to their vehicle. And how much is that going to detain that parent so that they can appropriately account for their time with their company that they work for?
Yeah, good question. We were just talking through that today. Is there somebody who wanted to answer that? Dina's thinking, not with a.
Justina probably could, because we spent hours on that today. Either Yeshua or Justina, I think.
I just sent right before this meeting to Dina a PowerPoint on Swanton's updated arrival and dismissal system. And Dina said, "Is this for families or staff?" And I replied, "Actually, it's probably for both." So, I mean, we laugh, but parents will need to be educated on that. And we do realize that. There's no easy way to do arrival and dismissal with the parameters right now that we have. So parents will need education on that, so they're prepared. I think especially at the beginning, you've got blue days and white days, so you've got multiple first days and first weeks that you're trying to work out the kinks too. I think with every new process, you start something, each day gets a little bit better until you find that sweet spot. And maybe I don't know. It's going to be a challenge for us, but we're going to get there.
Can I just jump in, Jen? The other thing, I think in each of your buildings, you're going to find that people are going to try to expedite it for two reasons. One is we know parents have to get to work, and that's huge. And we are losing a lot of instructional time during the day between, it is what it is, and we're going to do the best that we can, but between transitions and things like this. So, we want kids to be able to come in and, we work really fast, and I envision that happening. That's why another idea of an SRO helping with, traffic control. And that's a serious thing in Swanton because we don't want cars hanging out on the streets. The other thing Justina's working on is like teams of people. So we did pretty well when parents came to get their kids' stuff. We had a system where there was a group up front. They did those cars there. Somebody was behind. We got like 4 cars gone. That's the way I see it going. It will take a little while to get everybody on the same page, but that's my vision for the quickness.
And all the communities, there's going to have to be some talk. I talked with Julie about that too. Even the buses. So if you're headed to work and you're behind the school bus, that bus is pulled over now during health screenings with kids on the bus. We're trying to find ways to do that as fast as we can because safety concerns and just time. People get hostile and it's just an awareness and kind of a plea for patience at the beginning as we work through some of those kinks. So we're trying to mitigate as much as we can, but I don't think we're ever going to get 100% right now, at least at step 2. Step 3 might look different.
It's going to be interesting too. We just talked about today, we don't have a solution for it. But if I drop my child off at a bus stop and then go to work and my child has a fever, everything stops until we can get a parent or guardian or caregiver to take that child, because we can't put children who have a fever on the bus at all. So, we have to really communicate well with families that we need there to be a supervising adult, especially for young children, that can take a child home if they're not well. And we also, for sickness, oftentimes, if a child says my stomach hurts, classroom teachers and nurses handle it in a way, well, can you try and have a drink of water because you said your throat hurt? Or can you go back to class, rest for a minute, and then I'll send. We can't have any of that, So it's people are going to have to be patient with us. We are not allowed to have anybody with any kind of illness in our buildings at all. So it's going to be a challenge, and that goes for staff as well.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Dawn. Can't hear you, Don.
are we going to allow people to drop off children earlier than they have in previous years? Or are we staying with our traditional times?
We're going to have different times. We're working through that now. I don't know if we'll be ready to put it in this document that I want to send out this week. This may be something that has to go out school by school a little later. Probably, hopefully at the same time that we're able to send out our blue group and white groups, which will be next Friday, by the way, because we have to, with remote learning, we may be changing our classrooms. So it's important. We'd hate to send people with information about who their classroom teacher is and then have to change it a week later. So a lot of dominoes have to fall into place pretty quickly. But the arrival time for bus and for student drop off or walk will be different. And it may be the same time as usual for your school, but it won't be the same for everyone. We can't have all of our students, even if it's half of the students, we still can't have them all arriving at the same time through the same doors.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any more questions. I don't know if our public has any questions. Any comments, any questions, anyone? Hearing and seeing none. Thank you very much for the presentation. There was a lot of information.
Hi, Chris. Am I?
Yes.
Can you see me?
Yes.
As I'm eating my dinner. Sorry. My name is Debbie Winters, and my husband Gordon and I were just, and I had emailed Julie about this, but I understand the need to start at the hybrid option with the 2 days a week. And we were just wondering, we happen to be parents who work outside the home for the other 3 days a week. Has the district thought, and since decisions are made on the local level, has the district thought about options for students whose parents work outside the home for those 3 days?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're definitely working through maximizing childcare. We're advocating at the state level. What's nice is our Champlain Valley Superintendent region has, there's so many of us and it's more than half the state in terms of students. So we're engaged in meetings with the Child Development Division, Assistant Director, Let's Grow Kids and others so that we can really talk about providers. We don't actually have the space to provide. We wish that we had more space in our buildings. We would like to be able to do that, but we're challenged with our use of staff and our physical space. But we want to look at all options, working with partners, working with local childcare. What do you need to expand? Is there a space in town that can be used? The Child Division is definitely looking at fast tracking some of their licensing and regulations so that we can expand and that organizations, child care centers can expand and get back to capacity. But again, we don't control them. We can only work with them as partners. So we are working through that, but I haven't brought it up a lot, Debbie, because I can't make promises about other people's organizations. If we could provide it ourselves, we would certainly try and do that, but we just physically don't have the space. But it is in the front of our minds. I brought it up today.
And maybe, Julie, maybe it wouldn't be a big deal if we knew that we were moving from 2 to 5 days early, sooner rather than later. Families could probably accommodate a short period of time, but it's just we don't know when it will change. So, okay. Well, thank you all. Thank you.
I completely agree. And I know guidance is coming out. It's really tough. We get a lot of rumor and a preview of things, but then they meet together and change the guidance. So until we see it in writing and can work together in the steering committees and as a Champlain Valley region to work through it, our intent is to open up for our younger students if we can. But how long that takes, what the dispositions are in terms of the environment and the virus, what the requirements are, and what the guidance actually ends up saying. All of those are factors. but it is our intention. We want our younger kids in school more if we can accommodate that. There's not one person here who doesn't want that.
Thank you. I believe that's all the questions and comments. Hearing and seeing none. Thank you very much for that information. And I believe we're ready to move on. So next on the agenda, we're going to old business. First up is check warrants. Steve. Oh, there's Steve. Would you happen to have the numbers or?
I do. Thank you, Laura. Okay, the warrants that we have for August 4th right now, I'm showing accounts payable, $343,498.32. Payroll checks right now at $22,950.12. Payroll other disbursements, $1,323,348.76. And payroll deductions, $849,884.75. Bringing the total of the warrants at $2,539,681.95.
Okay, at this time, I'd entertain a motion to accept check warrants as read. Megan first. Terry's a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting check warrants as read, please raise your hand.
Excuse me, Chris, I didn't catch who did the first.
Megan was the first, Terry was the second. And as of right now, Devin left the meeting probably a half an hour ago. I'm assuming he lost connection. Okay, so once again, all those in favor of accepting check warrants as read, please raise your hand. I'm missing somebody. Let's see. Right now, I've got eight yeses or 7 yeses. So. Okay, motion carries 8-0. I found everybody. Okay, thank you. Next up on old business is the food service management contract renewals, and we would need a motion for this as well.
Yes, and I did include the renewal documents in the shared drive. There's actually 3 contract renewal documents broken down by the schools. So there's MVU, Highgate, and Swanton. You actually only have one MVSD food service management contract, but because we bid them, we split them out by school because you have separate operating accounts for those funds. The state wants us to do it this way. Last year was you're only ever allowed to have a 1-year food service management contract, but you're able to renew if you recall up to 4 times after that. So that's what these are. This would be your first renewal on those contracts. We are continuing with a fixed per plate cost with the Abbey is what we're recommending. I would like to say that, and I'm sure Justina and Dan would agree, the Abbey and Tina Bushy from the Abbey helping us through this very difficult time since March has been absolutely phenomenal, and she has gone above and beyond to be as supportive as she possibly can be and as accommodating as she can be. I know that's with the support of other people in that company, but we communicate sometimes multiple times a day, and she's attended meetings at the drop of a hat. So I just want to give her kudos for that. But I will say that these are the contract renewals that are required so that we can launch a program when school starts in a couple of weeks. But we did receive a memo from the Abbey stating that there will be costs. Obviously, we know that there's going to be costs that we maybe don't even know yet, but for packaging, distributing meals to classrooms, we had to buy carts for that, additional staffing possibly. So we may need to revisit these contracts and adjust, or at least have an amendment that will possibly contribute additional funds to the program. But I'll bring that information when we have it. We don't have all the logistics figured out yet, but we do need these contracts in place prior to the start of school, or we can't receive the reimbursement revenue. So we'll use this as a first step.
So at this time, I'd entertain a motion to renew the contracts with the Abbey Group. Don's the first. Steve's the second. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the renewals of the Abbey Group, raise your hand. Motion carries 8-0. Thank you.
Not to be presumptuous, Chris, but I had already sent you these in a DocuSign. If you can, now that it's approved, sign those as soon as possible and get them back, that'd be great.
Yep, I saw those. Okay.
Thanks.
Next up is the hot lunch paid student lunch bad debt.
Okay, so there's actually another document, a small spreadsheet in the Google Drive that basically outlines the bad debt that is still outstanding as of the end of last school year. Attempts were made to collect on that debt. I think some attempts are still being made to collect on some of those outstanding accounts. But the law says that that money cannot, those negative balances, cannot follow a student to a different school. So if they're sixth graders going to MVU, or they're seniors that have graduated, or they're matriculated to another school, that debt of the negative balances cannot follow them. And so that balance has to be paid from another source. If you remember, we did this last year. It's typically a small amount. Cumulatively, all the schools is $1,753.95. That, again, could be a little bit less now. I know we have food service coordinators that are actively still trying to collect on some of this money and following our procedure with that. But I'm looking for board approval to maybe have a not to exceed amount of this, the $1,753 from the general fund, since there's no other funding available to clean up these accounts.
So I'd entertain a motion to use general funds to pay the 1753, or not to exceed 1753. Gary's the first. Wow. Megan's the second. Any discussion? Peter.
Not to get technical, but it looks like we maybe ought to go to 1754.
I already know that there's been at least $100 that has come in. So
okay.
Yeah.
We'll be okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
These were numbers as of last week. So
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of using general fund to pay the bad debt, raise your hand. Motion carries 8-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Peter.
Just for clarification, back to the previous motion where we approved the Abbey Group, so that doesn't include Franklin?
It does not.
Okay.
No.
So that's done separately? We don't need to do that tonight?
Franklin is an in-house program, so we would already control it anyway.
Okay.
So next up is schedule board and superintendent goals work session.
So we've had so many meetings, we didn't actually get to meet. I did a little wordsmithing in the Google Doc and shared that with Devin and Terry. There was some chat back and forth. Terry, I don't know if you want to take it from here.
First of all, Julie did a lot of work. I don't know how you had the time with everything else that was going on, but do you want to, should we just show them what we, if you don't, I can't present, but if you could pull up that doc, the shared doc, can you?
Will you remind me what folder it's in, Terry?
It's in brainstorming.
Okay, let me see if I can find the right.
Shared
Was it
MVSD.
the 21st? It was the 21st, right? I think it was. We've met so often. I'm getting so sad next week when we don't have a special meeting.
Yeah, right. I'm sure Chris will be too.
That was bad juju.
Oh gosh, I said it out loud. Do I have to turn around 3 times or throw salt over my shoulder or something?
Yes.
Let me see what I can do. I have something that it looks like Terry cleaned up quite a bit. See what I can do.
I only cleaned up the beginning part.
There it is. I have 2 screens up, so everything's slower with 2 screens. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Good job.
Is this what you're looking for, Terry?
Yes, yes. So if we could, this is, I know we're going late tonight, so we'll kind of be brief. And the main purpose of going over this is decide what we want to do next and to also make sure if this is what we came up with. But remember, we had those goals, the school board, that were directly about the school board. Then we had the district board goals and we had the superintendent goals. Can everyone read that? Or is it too small? Okay, I'm taking that. People can read it. So I'll give everybody a minute to read it some more. And if you see anything that's wrong, let me know, okay? And we'll change it.
I'm not trying to nitpick, but my understanding of the agenda is we were just going to schedule our meeting to work on this, not work on it tonight.
Perfect. That'd be fine. Let's do that.
Especially since it's 8:35 already.
Perfect. Okay. Can you turn to the next page, Julie? Because it might help us with what our next step is. That one that's this, I tried to collect after we were doing this with Devin and all, I tried to collect all the strategies that we had talked about. So those are for the first goal, the one about the school board. So there's those 3 goals we have, and I tried to capture the strategies that we had come up with before. So I don't know what we want to do at this point. If there's people that want to work on certain goals and whether they want to work on the strategies for them, or if people just want to send me ideas that, that they think are important. I don't know what the next step should be. So I guess I'm looking for y'all's guidance.
It's awfully quiet. I'm wondering if we can make it discussing.
It's a quiet.
What if we I will put this brainstorm in today's meeting folder so that you can find it a little more easily. That you can all take the opportunity to look at it and send Terry emails and feedback. I anticipate our next few school board meetings are going to be long like this one. We're going to have the teaching and learning stuff to talk through. We're going to have a lot to discuss in the upcoming months. But, and we want to make sure we have other things that come to the board like our SEL curriculum work. So if we go ahead and we give feedback directly to Terry, then Terry and I and Devin, if he's available, can sort of work through it in a committee way and then bring it back to the board and just keep doing it that way.
Okay, can I make a suggestion? This document is really long, so it's just the first 2 pages that we're kind of looking for input on. And I mean, if you want to go back through it, it just gets more complicated when you do that. And the other thing is, we don't need to spend time looking at the strategies for the district school ones and also the superintendent school ones, because those are strategies they'll come up with. So our job is to look at the ones for the school board. Unless you can think of a strategy for like the district one that you think you feel really strongly about, put it in and then the committee will look at it. The committee of Julie, Devin, and me. Okay, thank you.
Chris?
Thank you, Terry. Don?
I'm wondering if we go back to when Mike DeWeese was with us, one of the things we talked about are job descriptions. I'm wondering, we have a group working on goals. I'm wondering if maybe we should have a group of people volunteer to work specifically on the job description, collect some from other places, talk with Julie, not take too much of Julie's time, and then bring it back as a draft to the board. I mean, that's up to you.
Can I make a suggestion on that? If you
Sure.
throw that in with what we're doing and send those job descriptions, I want Julie to not have to deal with this stuff because she's got so much
Okay.
going on. But I've got a job description. I think Pierrette has a job description. And if other people, maybe we could just handle it that way. If that works for everyone, I'd be more than happy. But I agree with you, Don. We can't wait too long to get that. It's it's one of our strategies.
I do have a job description I can send you if you would like that.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Pierrette, why don't you send it out to everybody?
Yes, please.
I will be glad to do that.
Okay, and so Terry will be the focal point, the data
I like it. I've got one to send out too. So
Good.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Terry, for spearheading that. And I do agree with you. I would like to keep some of this out of Julie's plate. I feel like she's got enough to do already. So we can handle some of it. That would be great.
We are all working very hard. Thank you.
So at this point, we don't need to schedule a meeting. I believe that we can kind of work behind the scenes a little bit, and maybe at our next meeting, we'll have a quick review on this, see where we're at, and then make another determination at that point. Perfect. Thank you. Next up is the updates on the Highgate parking lot project and the Swanton garage project.
Okay, so I received updates on the Highgate stormwater and parking project from Tyler Mumbley from Ruggiano Engineering and Scott Martin, the facility director there. There is a document that shares their points in the Google Drive as well. Basically, Scott wanted to ensure the board that he has taken photos, very thorough photos of the entire project from start to finish. I know Tyler has as well. Tyler and Amanda from the state stormwater program have done several site visits. That was part of the requirement for the stormwater grant piece, was she had to see the chambers, or at least one chamber actually being installed. All three stormwater chambers have been installed. The electrical conduit has been installed. Sidewalk and curb work is complete. The parking lot sub-base stone has been installed. Final cleanup and punch list items were to be completed last week. That being actually almost a week and a half ago now. Paving has commenced. It's expected to be about a week's worth of work. They've discussed potentially leaving the core space layer exposed for a week or so before putting the top coat on to help any or low-lying areas. They're working with the contractor on that in Hungerford Paving. More to complete to a small berm along the north side of the back parking area. Cleanup around stairs, edges of building, etc. will be finished when the pavement is done. Walkway / runoff area at South Chamber out to the playground has been installed. The base coat of pavement has now been installed in the back parking lot. And I was talking with Scott today, and he's actually kind of happy that it's raining because he gets to see how that new parking lot's working out and all this still on site. And he's following up on a few small things, but he's very confident in the contractor. So things are good. I don't know if anybody has any questions about that project. I honestly would have to probably just collect those and get follow-up from Scott on those, but I'm happy to do that. If not, then the Swanton garage. Oh, sorry. Yep.
Yep, I just wanted to comment. The company has done a fantastic job, and Scott has done a fantastic job of making sure they're staying on track. And he's updated me regularly, and really, they've done a fantastic job getting everything done.
the Swanton garage renovation project. This is from Jason. This is from me. Contract has been executed, proof of insurance is on file, and the deposit was paid following the board's approval. That was at 50% of the contract. State and town permits have been submitted and approved. They're currently waiting for the 15-day waiting period to expire. The contractor has arranged for the concrete and roof trusses have been ordered, and as soon as the waiting period is over, the contractor, will demo the existing shed and start the concrete work. Jason feels everything's on track.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions about the Swanton project? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much. Now we're on to other business, and first up with that is parent continued enrollment request. We may need executive session for this.
Yes, I would say that for both of them. We have a parent request and we have an employee request that would both contain confidential student or employee information. So I would hope we'd have a finding for that they're appropriate for executive session.
Okay. The next thing I have is future meeting dates, which our next board meeting is scheduled for August 18th at 6:30, which will also be virtual. And then August 6th, Thursday at 6, will be the virtual town hall for the full virtual remote learning options. And it'll be a place to ask questions and get a lot more information. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to go into executive unless somebody else has something else to add.
I'll make the motion that we go into executive session to talk about those two articles that we discussed.
And we'd be inviting in Julie. Do we need anyone else?
Nope.
So it'll be the board and Julie. Second. Don's a second. Discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor, raise your hand to go into executive session. Motion carries 8-0. Thank you, everyone, for joining in.
Thank you.